Usually the first thing that comes to mind when mentioning Texas is that everything is bigger in Texas. But this is even more true for Houston, the largest city in the state. Not only is Houston the biggest US city by landmass, but just about everything is bigger and more extreme, including their hairdos, rodeos, barbecues, trucks, and hats. This trend of the bigger the better is very evident within Houston's polarizing hip-hop scene, with its blinged out slab culture and ridiculous pen and pixel album covers, grills, lean sippin', slowed down chopped and screwed music, an endless array of rappers with either big or fat in their name. These attributes were all a little too ahead of their time and didn't quite translate into the mainstream during hip-hop's golden era, possibly due to Houston being geographically isolated from the main cities that hip-hop is most commonly associated with. In recent years, this has changed dramatically due to the internet, which has allowed Houston's unique and weird style to garner attention around the globe through a new generation of artists, influenced by the syrupy and screwed up sounds of Houston, most evidently with Houston native Travis Scott, and various niche internet scenes such as Vaporwave and Cloud Rap, borrowing multiple elements from the sound and aesthetic. So how exactly did Houston's screwed up sound come to be? Who are the pioneers, and how did this obscure local scene end up influencing a new generation of artists? These are the questions I'll be addressing in this video, so stay tuned. The city of Houston has never been well known for its music, despite being the birthplace of many significant developments in modern blues. This was mostly due to its distance from major entertainment hubs such as New York, LA, and Chicago. While Houston struggled to gain mainstream success during hip-hop's early years, label owners were usually more concerned with local sales over national exposure, as the size of Texas alone was enough to create a thriving business. The media also wasn't very concerned with reporting on Houston's music scene, as Southerners were just seen as country folk with nothing of worth to contribute, and narrators of hip-hop story, for the most part, not interested in anything that deviated from the established sound. This would all change in the mid-90s to early 2000s, with the success of artists such as UGK, DJ Screw, Little Kiki, Little Flip, Slim Thug, Trader Truth, Zero, Paul Wall, Mike Jones, Chamillionaire, and many others. But the first group to really put Houston on the map were Ghetto Boys. Ghetto Boys were a crew from Houston, put together by Rap-A-Lot Records label owner and Houston icon, Jay Prince. Prince, a car dealership owner at the time, formed the crew in 1987 in an effort to get his brother Sir Rap-A-Lot out of the streets, along with fellow MCs Raheem and the Psy Jukebox. The group had little to no success in the beginning, but quickly rose to fame when its original members were replaced with Scarface, Willie D, Bushwick Bill, and DJ Ready Red, resulting in a much darker and original sound. The group would gain huge success with this new roster of artists after releasing the album Grip It on That Other Level in 1989. Just 1 year later, the Ghetto Boys dropped their most groundbreaking album, We Can't Be Stopped, and practically put the South on the map. The Dark and Rugged album displays an iconic image of MC Bushwick Bill in the hospital after being shot in the eye on its cover, and contains various bangers, most importantly, My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me, a unique track with lyrics that explore post-traumatic stress disorder, paranoia, suicidal ideation, and loneliness. This haunting track, originally meant as a Scarface solo track, quickly rose in the charts, becoming a classic, essential to any hip-hop fan's playlist, and served as a catalyst for change in respect towards the South. Outside of the Ghetto Boys, Rap-A-Lot Records would help grow the careers of various artists, such as Devin the Dude, Slim Thug, Little Kiki, Zero, Trey the Truth, Pimp C, Bun B, Little Flip, and others. Releasing classic albums such as Scarface's The Diary, Gangsta Nip, The South Park Psycho, Odd Squad Fat Enough for Everybody, Devin the Dude, and various others. Meanwhile, South Park Coalition, a collective formed by Houston legend K Reno and co-founded by Gangsta Nip, began producing a large array of albums that would establish and cultivate a thriving local scene within the underground, releasing over 100 albums to date, demonstrating a killer work ethic. This DIY approach of flooding the market was extremely successful and became a running theme throughout the South, with artists releasing projects as often as possible, without the aid of a label, often out of car trunks or on the street. Reno and Nip's crew of like-minded South Park residents included the likes of Klondike Cat, Murder One, Point Blank, PSK 13, and Q-Boy, many of which are still actively making music today. While Houston gained some success within the South and mainstream during this period, its identity was still somewhat lacking. Things would change dramatically in the 90s, when Houston's biggest innovator and icon began to shake things up, or should I say, screw things up. Robert Earl Davis Jr., aka DJ Screw, or the Originator, was a Houston-based hip-hop DJ, best known for his contributions to Southern hip-hop and creation of chopped and screwed music. Davis's prolific career spans approximately 293 mixtapes that showcases slowed down and hazy mixes that contain mostly hip-hop cuts and live freestyles, as well as mixes in other genres such as funk, soul, and even rock. Screw is not only a pioneer of slow and atmospheric hip-hop, leader of the Screwed Up clique, and a huge influence on the culture of Houston, but also a big inspiration for many modern electronic and hip-hop artists, such as 106 Point Never, Eric Dingus, Space Ghost Perp, DJ Smokey, Clams Casino, and Balcom McCab. Davis was born in 1971 in the city of Smithville to a lower middle class family who moved between the city and Los Angeles. At a young age, Robert became involved in music through piano lessons and classical music, but his taste quickly shifted after becoming attracted to hip-hop culture through the movie Breakin'. At the time, Houston's hip-hop scene was still in its infancy, and breakout artists such as the Ghetto Boys were yet to put the city on the map. Inspired by what he saw in Breakin', Robert soon began experimenting with his mother's turntables, scratching B.B. King and Johnny Taylor records. It wasn't long before Davis began building a record collection of his own and spinning records at the age of 12 with his childhood friend Trey Atkins, who would rhyme. Atkins claimed that Robert built his own DJ setup with 2 turntables and a fader, salvaged from a radio tuner, and that the two would record mixtapes by laying a cassette recorder in front of the speakers. Atkins would later give Robert the nickname DJ Screw, due to his habit of defacing records that he didn't like with a screw. This nickname also foreshadowed the technique of slowing down records that he'd become famous for later on, as the speed of cassettes could be manipulated by turning a screw in some hi-fi units. Screw would later move to Houston with his father and began his career as a DJ at a local ice skating rink, dropping out of school shortly after. It was around this time that he would begin to pioneer the style of chopped and screwed music. But before we can get into that, it's important to address Screw's biggest inspiration, DJ Daryl Scott, a popular DJ who mixed dance records throughout the 70s and 80s. Scott's mixes contain the 2 basic elements of chopped and screwed music, doubled beats and slowed down records. But these techniques were never combined. Seeing the potential in these techniques, Screw began experimenting with his own slowed down style in the 90s, utilising new tools such as 4-track recorders that helped add a layer of texture to his hazy mixes and slowed the songs down to a snail-like pace that wasn't possible with turntables. His tapes were all long form, generally on a 100 to 120 minute Maxell XL2 grey tape, and featured cuts from various hip-hop styles, with some tapes featuring R&B and soul jams. For anyone unfamiliar, Chopped and Screwed is a style of remixing hip-hop tracks by manipulating the speed of 2 turntables and using the crossfader on a DJ mixer to create a stutter effect. This is done by playing the same record on both decks and pushing the second record forward by 1 beat. A great example of Screw's chopping techniques can be heard in his rendition of For the Love of Money by Bone Thugs and Eazy-E. These techniques are only the basis for Chopped and Screwed, and have developed over the course of many years, with DJs implementing extra effects and techniques to further enhance the ethereal nature of the style. Despite the fact that Screw never produced and only rapped occasionally, he was able to create an atmosphere and mood on each one of his tapes that reflected the events going on in Houston and in his life. He would do this through switching up his style on different tapes, sometimes showcasing his scratching and chopping skills, while on others, he would layer up to 6 tracks at a time, and let the music play out, most notably on tracks such as Tell Me Something Good on All Screwed Up Volume 2, which layers both the clean and explicit version of Tell Me Something Good by UGK, with SOS Band's No One's Gonna Love You, and the Izzy Brothers' Summer Breeze. Due to the intense stretching of these records, the voice of Screw and the music became distorted and deeper, adding a greater presence in the low end. This combined with the use of chopping, filters, tape hiss, and phases, creates an extremely intoxicating feeling for the listener that mimics the effects of marijuana and syrup. Screw would also narrate many of his tapes with shoutouts and salutes to his fallen friends, or a description of what he was up to, all with a strong southern accent. This narration and sedative atmosphere helps transport me into Screw's world and almost feels like I'm there chilling and smoking blunts with him. These mixes were the epitome of laid back and resonated deeply with Houston's population, many of which were looking for a way to relax in Houston's humid climate. Some of my favourite moments on Screw tapes include Screw's remix of the highly abstract and psychedelic track Fondren and Maine by Gorilla Mob. ESG's Swangin' and Bangin', D'Angelo's hit Brown Sugar, Lil Kiki's famous Pimp the Pen freestyle. Peeping in my window.
Because I'm just a pimp in my own grind. I'm living a life of crime, I'm tapping a dime, I'm moving nine. You know I got a grill in my mouth and every day it shines. I got the puff it nice. These niggas want me cause I got the what cheaper price on the dough. My red beam has a scope. I'm coming through and I'm taking a shower with some Crisco.
Bump and Grind by R. Kelly. The iconic Phil Collins In the Air remix, and legendary spitter, lyricist and SUC member Zero's Blue 22 freestyle. It didn't take long for a Screws sound to catch on, and before long he was forced to move out of the apartment he was selling tapes from, due to the volume of customers. Soon he was making thousands of dollars selling tapes from his new house on Greenstone Street in Gulf Crest. It was here, in a room nicknamed the Wood Room, that nearly all of Screw's mixes were recorded. In the Wood Room, Screw would mix instrumentals all night long, while rappers, usually toting blunts and double cups, freestyled over the beats. The freestyled nature of these mixes add a very natural and authentic vibe to the experience, and helped the artist develop a very specific style. In order to achieve the sound he wanted, Screw would lock these artists in the Wood Room so he could create the perfect mix, and wouldn't let them out until he had achieved what he wanted.
It's just some shit that was automatically, not to go in Screw house with no bullshit. Cause for one, when you walk in there, you're gonna be trapped in that bitch for 3 days anyway. So if you do fight somebody, you're gonna be fighting for 3 days. You can't get out.
Screw released his first official album in 1995 with Volume 2, All Screwed Up, and 3 in the Morning, Part 1 and 2. These albums helped push his popularity to new heights, and resulted in the attention of various record labels, all of which he turned down deals with. Soon he was being sent boxes of records in an effort by labels to get free promotion. According to Screwheads and Houston residents, Screw's mixtapes became just as popular as the radio amongst hip-hop fans, as the tapes would help introduce fans to the latest and hottest music. This was an extremely unique position for Robert, as it meant that not only was his creativity celebrated, but also his taste. This allowed him to put on and build the careers of various stars, most notably his Screwed Up clique, with important members such as Big Hawk, Big Mello, Big Mo, Big Pokey, the Botany Boys, ESG, Fat Pat, Little Flip, Little Kiki, Little O, Trader Truth, Zero, and affiliated artists such as Devin the Dude, K Reno, Little Troy, South Park Mexican, and UGK. Many of these artists would stay regional sensations, while others would gain worldwide success. This was the case for UGK, a group from Port Arthur, Texas, composed of Bun B and Pimp C, whose albums Super Tight and Ride and Dirty helped solidify Southern hip-hop's identity within the mainstream, by blending bluesy textures with funk, soul, 808s, and down south slang. DJ Screw and his affiliates came to define Houston hip-hop culture, and this influence was associated with more than just sippin' and screwin' records. Slab music was another term used to define the style associated with Houston rap, and referred to the iconic, candy-painted whips that represented the graffiti element of hip-hop for Houstonites, in the same way New Yorkers would express their art on the side of trains. The trend predates Houston rap, and can be traced back to pimp rides in 70s blaxploitation films. These large and obnoxious vehicles were originally driven by D-boys to indicate success and wealth, and quickly became an outlet for artistic expression. Slab, is also an acronym for slow, loud, and banging, as these rides were usually blaring the latest screw tape and crawling at a slow pace through Houston streets, often in a zigzagging formation that matched the psychedelic quality of the city's music. These vehicles were, and still are, extremely eye-catching, with large wheels, ridiculous paint jobs, signs in the trunk, bass-heavy speaker systems, spare wheels, and most importantly, obnoxiously large rims known as swangers or elbows, and sometimes choppers. The scene is somewhat similar to Japanese Bosusuka culture, as both scenes put a huge emphasis on colour and striking features. References to slabs can be heard throughout Screw's mixes and the rest of the scene, and are staples within Houston's culture, and really demonstrate the bigger the better phenomenon in H-Town. Slabs were not only a big part of Houston's hip-hop culture, but also represented which side of town you were from, with the north being blue and south side being red. During Screw's reign in the 90s, these two sides of the city were heavily divided, resulting in multiple carjackings and actual graffiti on the side of enemy slabs. Despite tensions between both sides, many residents from the north were closet screwheads and low-key fans of the music scene in the south side.
Being from the north side, I had to, be an undercover screw lover because I was jamming screw on the low. When my homeboys come around, they catch me with a screw tape with a little Kiki in the deck. They gonna clown me and tell me get it out of there. We from the north side.
Because of Screw's success, the north felt left out and wanted a piece of the action. This resulted in DJ Michael 5000 Watts creating his own chopped and screwed mixes and filling the void in the north. With his partner OG Ron C, Watts would form the group Swisha House, bringing talents such as Paul Wall, Mike Jones, Slim Thug, and Chameleonaire into the spotlight. Despite Watts paying homage to Screw throughout his career, tensions between the Screwed Up clique and Swisha House would develop, as Watts was clearly capitalizing off Screw's ideas, relabeling them as Swisha mixes. The beef between Swisha House and the Screwed Up clique would eventually come to an end, resulting in collabs between the two crews that would help elevate the scene to new levels of popularity. Swisha House and its affiliated artists ended up taking the world by storm in the late 90s, with tracks such as Sittin' Sideways by Paul Wall, and most importantly, Still Tippin' by Mike Jones. The over-the-top colour schemes and ridiculousness of slab culture also translated into an emerging art style within Houston. Pen and Pixel were a design company responsible for some of Houston and the South's most intriguing and iconic album artwork. Initially, the team created works that portrayed their artists as tough and gangster, but as the style evolved, Houston's blinged out and sparkly aesthetic came to fruition, with rappers sporting grills and chains, Broads and Benjamins against backdrops of fire, syrup, and even grizzly bears. When viewing this art, I can't help but wonder what these people were thinking, as many of these artworks are so bizarre that they don't even make sense as rap album art. This style would only grow in popularity for years to come, and was even adopted by artists outside of the South, such as Snoop Dogg. Meanwhile, Vietnamese immigrant and Houston icon Johnny Dang would begin to capitalize on the city's obsession with the big and striking, with his custom jewelry business after meeting rapper Paul Wall. Dang would go on to supply the grills and chains to many of Houston's biggest stars, and has continued to be the go-to guy for jewelry in the broader southern hip-hop scene, with artists such as Migos, Gucci Mane, Lil Pump, and Chief Keef shouting him out on their songs. Chains and candy-painted slabs were not the only thing that sparkled in the South. Lean, a popular codeine-based beverage, also known as mud, drank, or scissorp, was and still is a major component of Houston's hip-hop culture, but all that glitters is not gold. It's a common misconception that Screw's techniques were inspired by the effects of lean, a recreational drug created by mixing cough syrup with Sprite and hard candy. But Screw actually claimed that weed was one of the more important influences in his creative process, stating that the slowed down style stuck with me because when you're smoking weed and listening to music, you can't bob your head to nothing too fast. While lean was not the inspiration for Screw's techniques, it quickly became synonymous with his music and Houston in general. But the city's relationship with the beverage has a long history. According to Houston-based author and historian Lance Scott Walker, Drank emerged in the city during the 1960s in a more primitive form, when blues musicians would mix Robitussin and beer. These musicians lived in the 5th Ward, 3rd Ward and South Park neighbourhoods of Houston, and the formula was quickly appropriated by the younger generation into a codeine and promethazine soda mix in the 80s and 90s. The drink fit the Screwhead lifestyle, as its sedative effects complemented the slowed-down atmosphere of Screw's music, and acted as a cold refreshment from Houston's climate. Lean was not only an enjoyable experience, but also highly fashionable, due to the way it looked, and how it fit the flashy and blinged out nature of the scene. References to the beverage on DJ Screw's mixtapes during the 90s would help push the drug's popularity to new levels. But it was Memphis group 3 6 Mafia's smash hit, Sippin' on Some Scissor, featuring Houston's own UGK, that would bring the drink to a nationwide audience. Unfortunately, the drink was never stigmatized within Houston, and this led to widespread abuse throughout the area, contributing to the deaths of various key players such as Big Mo, Pimp C, and the originator himself. Being more of a chill and reserved person, Screw decided to distance himself from the scene, and moved to Missouri City where he continued to work. As a result, his releases began to slow down, and his health began to deteriorate due to a lack of sleep and exercise, poor diet, and drug abuse. Screw was found dead on the 16th of November 2000 in the bathroom of a studio he was building. The coroner reports found that he had died of a codeine overdose. In addition to codeine, Valium and PCP were also found in his system. This day marked a tragedy within Houston and had a major impact on the scene as a whole. Screw, Pimp C, and Big Mo's codeine-related deaths were not the only tragic incidents within Houston. Fellow screwed-up clique artists Fat Pat and Big Hawk were also taken way too early as a result of gun violence. But the incident that stands out as the most unsettling is the case of South Park Mexican, a rapper who initially began his career as a Christian MC, who later ended up being convicted of child molestation. SPM has maintained his innocence while incarcerated, and fans and supporters are still demanding his release to this day. Unfortunately, Screw was unable to obtain the fame and stardom shared by his peers. This is due largely to the fact that he refused to sign a deal with a major label unless he could bring his team with him. His back catalogue was also extremely overwhelming, and the length of his tracks made it difficult to digest for casual listeners, and those outside of Houston didn't really get it. This polarization could be seen throughout the whole of Southern hip-hop during Screw's time, with Miami's highly sexualized and bass-heavy sound, along with Memphis's haunting and triplet style, that just didn't sit well with the mainstream and hip-hop's gatekeepers from the East and West. But Screw in Houston still managed to have a lasting impact, and this could be seen with the success of tracks such as Still Tippin' by Mike Jones, Sippin' on Some Syrup by 3 6 Mafia and UGK, Pouring Up by Pimp C, and a whole lot of tracks that promoted Houston's fashion, sound, and lifestyle. This could also be seen through the success of OG Ron C's Chop Stars, a crew of DJs who helped bring chopped and screwed music into the mainstream in the early 2000s, working with artists such as Drake, or repping Screw's name and paying homage. But as Screw would say, it's only a screw tape if I screw it. Despite this sentiment, there are actually quite a few Screw-influenced DJs around today, my favourite being Slim K, who regularly remixes new mixtapes and tracks. The influence of Houston would continue to grow throughout the 2000s and into the 10s, with artists employing a more colourful and bling-heavy fashion style in their music videos. The rise of the South saw artists such as Lil Wayne and Gucci Mane promoting codeine abuse and showcasing a lifestyle reminiscent to that of Houston's rap scene. These artists would receive large backlash and criticism, but despite this, old heads had no control over the younger internet generation who were being shaped by the sounds and ideas of the South. In the early 10s, Houston's influence would begin to make its way onto the web and into the weird realm of outsider hip-hop through various unique and experimental artists. One such artist was Viper, an enigmatic MC and talented producer from H-Town, who pushed Houston's sedated sound into meme territory, with syrupy production and a vocal style that can only be described as lean the fuck out. This style is best exemplified on his most famous track, You'll Cowards Don't Smoke Crack. This track was taken as a joke by many, and was quickly labelled as meme rap. But believe it or not, Viper's music began to catch on with a more serious audience, who most likely gained appreciation of his artistic intentions after enjoying his music ironically. Part of Viper's appeal for these fans was that they didn't quite know why they liked him, who he was, or if he was even serious. This ambiguity surrounding his music helped inspire a generation of quote-unquote post-ironic rappers, whose music, like Screws, focused on creating a vibe that you either got or you didn't. This style quickly grew, with artists such as Lil B, Main Attractions, and Space Ghost Perp, who all shared a common appreciation of screwed up music and pushed a sound that doesn't rely on wordplay, clever rhyme schemes or flows, but rather on a vibe and atmosphere, usually explored through freestyling and letting the beat do most of the talking. During this era, producers such as Clamps Casino, Eric Dingus, Friendzone, and DJ Smokey explored this slowed down and ethereal style pioneered by Screw, and created the ideal atmosphere for rappers to wallow in. This was the beginning of cloud rap, a style that combined the influences of hip-hop's third coast, with a sprinkle of irony, self-awareness, emotional vulnerability, and a whole lot of drugs. Slowed lyrics, beats drenched in reverb and delay, as well as many references to Houston and Screw. While Screw may not have been influenced by lean, cloud rappers certainly were. In fact, just about every cloud rapper is sipping on something, whether it be Gatorade, blood, tears, or just good old drank. And this trend has even made its way into the mainstream, with artists post the 2016 XXL freshman list, making reference to lean and using more psychedelic sounding beats. Along with drank, bling heavy imagery, and just a general ignorant flex heavy aesthetic in SoundCloud rap, is clearly rooted in the culture of Texas, with its over the top and ridiculous bigger and better attitude. References to the culture can be seen all over the place, with pen and pixel artwork, and even remixes of older Houston tracks, such as DJ DMD and Little Kiki's famous track 25 Lighters, which is repurposed by Marcy Main of Goth Money Records in his track of the same title. Screw's music was not only an inspiration for rappers, but also for hipsters and indie artists in the hypnagogic pop scene and occult internet genre Witch House. Both scenes employed screwed up time-stretching techniques to achieve an atmosphere of drowsiness and sedation, with Witch House that later evolved into the wave genre, also employing southern drum patterns and percussion. LA beat scene legend Shlomo also credits DJ Screw as a big influence on his production, and states that slowing down his own tracks is the first thing he does when remixing. Screw's slowed and throwed style is also evident in the production style of various left-field EDM artists, such as Actress and Andy Stott, whose use of breaks on We Stay Together is very reminiscent of Screw's time-stretching techniques. Meanwhile, ambient producer Daniel LePayton would begin experimenting with Screw's techniques, creating what many agree to be the first Vaporwave album, Echo Jams. Echo Jams was a very odd release, taking cheesy pop songs and slowing them down to a snail-like pace, with chops and effects that demonstrated clear inspiration from DJ Screw. This obscure release would serve as a template for Vaporwave, and the genre would begin to flourish alongside cloud rap. Both genres demonstrated a clear obsession with pen and pixel style graphics, and visuals with references to lean, bling, and other Houston tropes. Due to the irony associated with both cloud rap and vaporwave, a strong undertone of excessive consumption and parody of capitalism began to make their way into the music, with artists from both genres making references to escapism through drug use, money, and nostalgia, which really challenges the idea of the bigger and better in Houston. This style would later gain mainstream recognition, with A$AP Rocky's references to Houston culture and screwed up beats on Live Love A$AP, and Houston native Travis Scott's breakout album Rodeo. Scott would later pay his respects to Screw on the track R.I.P. Screw on the heavily psychedelic album Astroworld. Drake, an artist originally scouted by Rap-A-Lot Records founder Jay Prince, has also been heavily influenced by Houston, and this can be seen with the track June 18th, which makes references to one of Screw's most iconic tracks. This freestyle features Big Mo, Bird, Demo, Key C, Youngstar, Big Pokey, K-Love, and Haircut Joe, and featured on Screw's 1996 mixtape, Chapter 12, June 27th. This date is celebrated as an unofficial statewide holiday in Texas, and is heavily ingrained into the city's culture to this day. Houston is without a doubt one of the most diverse and obscure scenes in hip-hop's history, with a sound for just about everyone, ranging from prolific conscious rappers such as K Reno, soulful and melodic artists like Big Mo and Zero, oddballs such as Devin the Dude, Viper and Riff Rap, and even hip-hop's most famous Christian rapper Lecrae. So it's no surprise that Houston's scene can be extremely overwhelming for newcomers, and that's why I suggest starting out with the basics. Firstly, I recommend checking out We Can't Be Stopped by the Ghetto Boys and Scarface's The Diary, as this will provide you with some context, and from here you can begin checking out Rap-A-Lot Records' discography. If you're feeling up for it, the South Park Coalition has an endless array of projects to explore and will keep you busy for hours, with stories from the Black Book being the best place to start. Swisha House have a variety of great chopped and screwed mixtapes, most importantly Lil Wayne's Carter series, as well as regular tapes such as Who Is Mike Jones and Paul Wall's People's Champ. Chamillionaire's Mixtape Messiah series is also worth checking out, as it's the longest and most bought mixtape in Houston history. UGK's Riding Dirty and Bun B's Trill are also great projects that I highly recommend. No list of Houston projects is complete without mentioning the Screwed Up Clique, with albums such as City of Syrup by Big Mo and Fat Pat's Ghetto Dreams, as well as ESG's Sail in the South and Little Kiki's Don't Mess with Texas. You also can't forget Zero's debut, Look What You Did to Me, and Trey's Restless. Screw's catalogue is probably the most dense, but I recommend just checking out a few of his grey tapes, such as Codeine Fiend, Blue 22, Wine Brie Over Gold, and my personal favourite, Stressed Out, as well as his albums All Screwed Up and 3 in the Morning Part 1 and 2. I'm only just scraping the surface with my recommendations. I really encourage you to go digging on your own, because there's just so much out there. So please comment with your recommendations below. In conclusion, the efforts of Screw and the wider Houston scene have had a huge impact on the trajectory of hip-hop. Whether it be the production, atmosphere, bling, or rapping style, that continue to impact the approach of newer generations, with new rappers and producers popping up all the time, taking influence from H-Town. This style has not only changed the definition of rap and how artists approach the genre, but also had a huge impact on various niche scenes such as Vaporwave and Cloud Rap that continue to evolve from their screwed up roots. If you enjoyed this video, I highly encourage you to join the conversation in the comments. Have you got a memory to share? Favourite screw tape? Artist or album? Feedback to give? Or suggestions for a future video? Please let me know and share this with one of your friends. If you're interested in this type of content, I have another video about Memphis rap that's close to hitting 1 million views, so you should definitely check it out and subscribe, as I have more exciting scenes to cover and you don't want to miss out. These videos take me ages to make, so please be patient. Also, shout out to my first patron and everyone that contributed to the script. I really appreciate your support. If you're interested in becoming a patron, the link will be in the description and on the screen. I'm also open to video editing work and design for your music or events, so please hit me up if you're interested. You You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Turismo4K. I hope you enjoyed this video and thanks for watching. See you soon.